Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the greatest show in the galaxy, the show where I, the curator, discuss my personal favorite show of all time, personal favorite franchise of all time, Doctor Who. And today, as you may have noticed in the thumbnail, we're doing something a little bit off the beaten path for once. We will be discussing The Doctor, which is the same thing we have been doing since, well, this entire month, actually. The first week of this month, the first episode, I should say, of this past month, of the month of February, we discussed the classic era Doctors, the original seven. The second episode of this month, we discussed the modern era Doctors, the modern five, if you will. Today we'll be discussing other versions of the Doctor. And yes, some of them are canon, some of them most certainly are not, but it's still pretty fun to talk about. Now, something that I've been trying to do ever since, well, last week actually. It's something I've done 2 or 3 episodes already, and after last week, I kind of liked the idea, and I decided to maybe try to do this every episode of the show. However, due to the nature of what it is, it just didn't happen this week. It doesn't necessarily going to happen every week, but I found an alternative. So what I usually like to start every show with is by bringing up a certain actor, actress, or a production member from the history of the show, the long and storied history of the show, who had a birthday the past week since my most recent pre-taping of the show. I scour Doctor Who social media areas and try to find, because Doctor Who social media, the various accounts usually post, whether it's fans doing it or whether it's an official capacity. They usually post whenever a actress, actor, or production member has a birthday of some sort, and I just like to bring up the person and their shed a light on their birthday, wish them happy birthday, and thank them for helping us create this show that we love so much. I couldn't really find one this week. Maybe there is one that I've missed, and for that I apologize. But I did find something that's just as, some might say, equally as memorable. So, in a recent in the recent Brit Awards ceremony, the current Doctor, the 13th Doctor, Jody Whitaker, has announced that she's pregnant. Uh, I I didn't really do too much research. I think that's a second pregnancy for her, or maybe it's the first. I don't know. Again, I probably should have checked this ahead of time, but yeah. So congratulations to the wonderful Miss Jodie Whittaker. She has 2 more episodes of Doctor Who, and thankfully for her, she's already finished them, so she doesn't have to go through having to film an episode of Doctor Who. Um, During pregnancy. So thankfully for her, she's already completed her run as the Doctor. The episodes are finished, they're complete, they're ready to be released. They're just waiting for the right date to be released. And obviously, Jodie Whittaker is going to be doing the press releases. I would assume doing press releases, press meetings, and whatnot for the final 2 episodes of the show. And well, like I said, I just wanted to say congratulations, or rather, Mazel Tov to the wonderful Miss Jodie Whittaker, and I wish her good luck on whatever future endeavors she might have. Obviously, after playing the Doctor, one of the most iconic characters in television history, uh, one would imagine that the phone calls never stop ringing for an actor or actress after a role like that. So, thank you, Jodie Whittaker. Congratulations, and we quite literally could not do the show without you. Now, moving on to the actual topic of today's episode, I specifically titled this episode "The Obscure Doctors," even though some of them might not be quite as obscure as you might think. Some of them kind of are. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, one of the people on this very same picture that I have right now and is part of the thumbnail for the show, I have literally never heard of before starting this episode, or rather, before starting the research. So, sadly, I cannot really talk about a doctor that I haven't really experienced in any capacity. So, I will just only be focusing on the Doctors that I myself personally have experienced. Starting with the obvious one, the first of two canon Doctors, one of which, this Doctor in particular, is in the intro of this show. You see him pretty much um, every time you start this show, unless you're one of those people who just skips the intro. And seriously, who does that? Why would you do that? It's Paul Mcgann, also known as the Eighth Doctor, known by some people as the Movie Doctor, even though he did way more than just the movie itself. But yeah, Paul Mcgann, the immediate successor to Sylvester McCoy. Sylvester McCoy actually did appear in the movie for a brief spell. He gets shot by some street gang members. Not a fatal shot, but the thing is, because he got shot, he was taken to a hospital where they removed the bullets. But the doctors realized that something's off about his heartbeat, that his hearts are racing for no reason in particular. Little did they know that he actually has two of them. I guess they just didn't, you know, uh, well, they actually no, they did took an X-ray scan, but they looked at the X-ray scan much later, or much after um, uh, the uh, the operation, so they didn't know that the guy had two hearts, and they accidentally dropped some of the surgical equipment into his heart, and that's the reason why the Seventh Doctor died, and then regenerated into the Eighth Doctor, played by Paul McGann. The costume is actually one of my personal favorite costumes for the Doctor, and the weird thing is, he actually chose this costume that you see right here just based on some random Halloween. No, not Halloween. Just random costumes that he found in the locker room of the hospital because it was New Year's Day, or rather New Year's Eve, and a lot of people decided to just dress up in costumes for the New Year's Eve celebrations. And he just took a random mishmash of different costumes for different people, put them on, and just there we go. That's the iconic Eighth Doctor outfit that you see for you. And as far as doctors getting to choose what they wear scenes, which are always some of my favorites, this is, I would say, pretty unique because he didn't necessarily get to choose his doctors. Occasionally, with something like the 10th Doctor or the 13th Doctor, we get a scene of them in a wardrobe. For the Doctor was in the TARDIS, and for David Tennant, it was in the massive wardrobe inside the TARDIS, and for Jody Whitaker, it was in like a clothes shop. And I believe also Colin Baker also got to show us the wonderful, massive wardrobe that the TARDIS has when he chose his iconic, colorful costume. This Doctor didn't get a chance to do that, which is pretty interesting and unique, in my personal opinion. Now, obviously, we're talking about this Doctor. I have to recommend you watch the movie. Obviously, the Doctor Who movie, simply sometimes called Doctor Who the movie or just Doctor Who, because this movie was originally intended to be a backdoor pilot to bring back the show after 7 years of cancellation. It was canceled in 1983, with the final episode being Survival, an episode we discussed in a previous episode. And 7 years later, they tried to bring the show back. They tried to actually bring the show back several times before we got the 2005 revival. But this was originally supposed to be a backdoor pilot for an American version of the Doctor, which not really the American Doctor, is still British because it's a British character. It's like casting a American James Bond, but it was planned to be co-produced with American production companies and mainly broadcast in the United States for the most part. That kind of fell apart because the American audiences just didn't work for them. And obviously, British audiences around the world have had their fair share of criticisms towards the movie. Not everyone liked it, but for the most part, it wasn't bad. It just felt like a really long episode of the show with some changes that some people, much like some changes happening in the show right now, people weren't happy with. But at the time, the response was from the British side not bad, but the response from the American side people just really couldn't get on board with this character because you're trying to Americanize a British icon, essentially, and that's where the series sort of fell apart, and they just decided to not go with a full series. And sadly, this for a very long time remained the only live action appearance of this Doctor, the Eighth Doctor, played by Paul Mcgann. Now, obviously, we did get another chance. This Doctor did get another chance with 2013's The Night of the Doctor, where we finally get to see this Doctor regenerating into the next Doctor, which we will be discussing in just a minute. But the Night of the Doctor is just is a prelude, a sort of prequel to the Day of the Doctor, hence the name, and it's basically just the Eighth Doctor's final moments, his regeneration. I think every Doctor deserves to have their own regeneration scene, and this Doctor finally, after so many years, after what was it, 17 years, I think. After 17 years, he finally got to have his own regeneration scene and regeneration story, I should say, and it felt well earned. And obviously, we can kind of see that he's slightly changed his costume, but for the most part, his costume really changed the same. And for the most part, this Doctor, despite only appearing in 2 live action pieces of material in Doctor Who, he's actually one of the most versatile Doctors ever. He's actually appeared in arguably the highest number of episodes out of any Doctor ever, period, end of sentence, because he played this particular Doctor on Big Finish for many years, and he's just he had so many stories being written for him, and it just he I believe he actually had the highest number of companions out of all the Doctors, including the modern ones, including the classic ones. He had like dozens of them because of the huge multitude of stories that he appeared as the Doctor in. And that's not even counting novels and comics and video game appearances and various other materials featuring the Eighth Doctor. But for the most part, they basically used images from the movie, like this one and like this one, to promote all the Big Finish audio productions that he has appeared in for many years. And since the Night of the Doctor, with this new look for this Doctor, they started to use this new look of the Doctor for any and all Big Finish productions that came out after Night of the Doctor. So that's kind of interesting. That he's one of the few Doctors that actually managed to change his appearance when his image is being shown on a Big Finish cover, which is kind of interesting. Speaking of Big Finish, we got to talk about some of his. Now, I will admit I have not actually listened to a lot of the Eighth Doctor's Big Finish episodes. I believe I only listened to him like once. I did like it. I enjoyed it, but for some reason I never really went back to keep pace and listen to all the other ones he had. I'm right now. I'm much more interested in some of the more classic Doctors, the Fifth Doctor, the Sixth Doctor, and the Seventh Doctor. I'm making my way through what is called the monthly range of those specific 3 Doctors. But I will get down to the Eighth Doctor eventually. But the one I did actually listen to, and is actually, from what I've been able to gather, is considered one of the best, is Blood of the Daleks. And as you can see, it kind of doesn't. The camera doesn't really. It doesn't hide the full camera. There you can kind of see my hand over there. But yeah, Blood of the Daleks. Obviously, it's a Dalek story, so it's gonna be pretty high on a lot of other people's lists. But even without just having the Daleks there, it's a pretty good episode. And also, I believe it's one of the earliest examples of Nicholas Briggs voicing the Daleks in a Doctor Who story. I believe he also voiced the Daleks in specifically Dalek stories from Big Finish, but this is, I believe, one of the earliest examples of him voicing the Daleks in a Doctor Who story. Or actually, maybe no, I think he actually might have voiced the Daleks on other episodes featuring the classic Doctors. But never mind, it's an early example of him voicing the Daleks in a Doctor Who episode. And it's a two-parter, actually. I believe back in the day, I was able to find both of these two parts on YouTube before they got taken down. Before I even got a Big Finish account and started to actually, pay for these episodes the way you're supposed to. So I was able to hear both of these on YouTube. For as far as I know, it's no longer on YouTube. It's been taken down for obvious reasons. Obviously, it's understandable. But this was during a time where I actually could have listened to it and actually heard the whole thing. I kind of want to go back into actually buy it properly and listen to it full time now. But yeah, this is the first part, and this is the second half. And right there, this woman you see on the cover. And by the way, speaking of the cover, you can clearly see that there's the Paul Mcgann from the movie on the cover. It's going to happen, and it's going to come up a lot when you're going to look at Big Finish audio covers featuring the Eighth Doctor. But this woman right here, not the one right next to the Doctor, that's the companion. Which, if I remember the story correctly, it's a companion where the Time Lords just sort of assigned her to the Doctor to look after him as they sent him on various missions, as the Time Lords were known to do, especially during the Third Doctor's era, and a little bit during the Fourth Doctor era, and especially in the Second Doctor era. So the Time Lords usually just send the Doctor on missions whenever they see fit. So this is a companion they sent to him to make sure that he completes the mission and doesn't, run away from them halfway through. But the other woman, the woman you see, the much larger woman you see on the cover, and not large because large. I mean, it's basically she's just in a larger picture. The woman right next to the Dalek. Here's where I'm going with this. This woman is actually Haley Atwell. Yes, that Haley Atwell who played Peggy Carter in the MCU, various MCU projects. She appeared in most of the Captain America movies. She was right there at the very end of Endgame with Steve Rogers at the very end there. And she also got her own show that lasted 2 seasons, Agent Carter. And I believe she also played Cinderella's mom in Cinderella. And she's done a lot of other stuff since then, but that is really the roles you might most recognize her from. But yeah, this is her as a Doctor Who villain. She was actually a Doctor Who villain, like way before the MCU was a thing. So I felt like that's a pretty interesting thing to bring up. But yeah, so check out this story, Blood of the Daleks. It actually features one of the coolest names for a planet I have ever heard. The name of the planet that the plot of this story mostly takes place on is called Red Rocket Rising, because it was a red rocket that landed on this planet and colonized it with humans. So yeah, the planet is literally called Red Rocket Rising, which is just, in my opinion, one of the most awesome names for a planet ever. Now, I didn't want to leave you guys off with just this Big Finish story, so I decided to bring up also this, widely considered to be one of the best Doctor Who stories ever told, Big Finish or otherwise. Dark Eyes is just well, a lot of people consider it to be the best Doctor Who Big Finish story of all time. So I've been hearing the praises of this specific story for many, many years now, and I think it might be time for me to start listening to it maybe after the show at some point. But yeah, this is the one I have to recommend to people because of all the good stuff I've been hearing about it, and it's so good that it actually takes place over several parts. This is part 1. This is part 2, and this Lex Luthor type person you see right next to the Dalek, right opposite the Doctor, that's the Master in this specific story. This is another reincarnation of the Master. The Master regenerated, presumably after the movie Master, which you can kind of see him over there. He's the guy with the flamboyant costume right behind the Doctor, played by Eric Roberts, who actually did get his own Big Finish series right after this. Well, a couple of years ago, actually. But yeah. So immediately after this specific incarnation of the Master, he regenerated, or rather got a brand new body and brand new form in the form of this body, played by Alex O'Neill, which is another version of the Master. This is part 3, which, as you can see, also features the Master. And I believe I can't remember if this is where the Master finally constructs his iconic laser screwdriver that he has during the um, the Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords storyline, which actually made a comeback in World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls. But he either constructed it during this time or during the Time War with the War Master. But this is part 3 of Dark Eyes, and this is, I believe, the finale, Dark Eyes Part 3, I think. Yeah, we can clearly see some Sontarans, and there's the Dalek time strategist. So clearly, this pretty much directly ties into the Time War. So I just kind of hope this image is legit. But never mind. So yeah, Dark Eyes, check it out. It's considered to be one of the greatest Doctor Who stories ever written. Which brings us back. Which brings us now to the War Doctor, played by John Hurt, specifically for the 50th anniversary special. A little bit of behind the scenes story there. Uh, Christopher Eccleston refused to come back for the 50th anniversary because his relationship with the BBC regarding his departure from the show really did not end well. And he simply refused to be a part of Doctor Who for a very, very long time. Now, in recent years, he sort of softened on that. He started working with the Big Finish crew and producing new Doctor Who stories as the Ninth Doctor for Big Finish, which is great. But because he simply outright refused, he was offered to come back and he refused to come back for the 50th anniversary. He the BBC was just simply forced to recast, which resulted in the creation of the War Doctor, a sort of in-between Doctor between the Eighth Doctor and the Ninth Doctor, specifically the Doctor who fought in the Time War, and that's really what he's best known for, being the Doctor for the Time War. And much like the Eighth Doctor, this Doctor, while only appearing a handful of times, he actually had so many other stories being told for him and about him that people just don't really realize. People mostly know him for this, the Day of the Doctor, the 50th anniversary special, the special where he appeared in fully. Obviously, he was teased at the very end of the name of the Doctor, but this is his like first full-on episode as the War Doctor, where we get to see the Time War in action for the very first time on screen, or rather, the best look at the Time War that we got up until that point, in live action, that is. But another great War Doctor story, and one of my personal favorites, isn't actually an episode. It's actually in a book. It's not even a Big Finish thing. It's in this novel titled Engines of War. And it's one of the best Doctor Who novels I've ever had the pleasure of listening to, so much so that I actually went back and listened to it several other times after the fact. And it's written by George Mann, as you can see right there. But the audiobook, which I highly recommend people get the audio version of it, because it's narrated by Nicholas Briggs, who, for those of you who don't know, he's like the main producer of Big Finish. He's worked with pretty much all the Doctors at this point, but he's also mainly known for being the voice of the Daleks on the show. And he does a great impression of John Hurt's the War Doctor. He narrates the War Doctor, and obviously he voices the Daleks in the audiobook for this novel, and he does just as great of a job as he's always doing, either on Big Finish or on the actual show itself or on video game appearances or anything. He's just the iconic voice of the Daleks, and he's one of my favorite people working in Doctor Who ever. And I believe certain moments from this book have appeared in comic book form. This is actually the moment where the War Doctor's main companion, Cinder, spoiler alert, she doesn't have the greatest fate in this story, but it's actually, maybe I shouldn't have said that in full Hagrid form. But yeah, this is actually a moment from the from the book, and it's actually the moment that actually made the Doctor realize that there is no hope for the Time Lords anymore. There is no stopping the Time War unless he gets up and does something about it. So yeah, it's an iconic moment for the War Doctor. Going back a little bit, we have the War Doctor's Big Finish run. Now, the Big Finish crew decided in 2015, I believe, they decided to do a series of stories featuring the War Doctor. They had four different stories in mind. They were all 3 parts each. This is the first one, Only the Monstrous, and obviously these full cast audio dramas do feature the return of John Hurt as the War Doctor. So basically, it's the War Doctor. It's a War Doctor's story without actually being a an episodic story of the War Doctor. This is for those of you who are disappointed that we only got to see the War Doctor once or twice on television. He actually went back and did a couple more stories on Big Finish, and I highly recommend listening to them. First of all, because it's Doctor Who, and one can never have too much Doctor Who in their life, but it's the War Doctor, played by one of the greatest actors in history, John Hurt, and it's the Time War. The Daleks are there. It's one of the, and it's also, I've listened to this one in particular. It's really good. It's very expertly written and very expertly performed by all the associated parties. And obviously, like I mentioned, there are four of these. The last one, they actually managed to record it like a month or two before John Hurt unfortunately passed away in 2017. So they actually managed to do all four of the stories they were planning to do before his untimely passing. But I would highly recommend listening to all four of these. Like I said, I only listened to this one, but mostly because I haven't gotten around to listening to the other ones. I will correct that mistake eventually. But speaking of the War Doctor and Big Finish, the War Doctor, going back even further back, we have The War Doctor Begins, which is a relatively newer series featuring the War Doctor. Now, obviously, this all happened after after John Hurt passed away, so they couldn't do even any more stories with him if they wanted to. But they actually went back and recast Jonathan Carley, which I believe is one of the three main guys on Big Finish. He's uh, like Nicholas Briggs's partner or something like that. He does a lot of other stuff for Big Finish, not just pertaining to Doctor Who. He does a lot of Big Finish audio productions. So he was recast as the War Doctor, a younger version of John Hurt's the War Doctor. I haven't actually listened to any of these stories just yet, but I've listened to several excerpts just to see if he actually manages to capture the feel of the War Doctor, and for my ears, he does. He actually does manage to sound like a younger version of John Hurt, and he does manage to capture the feel of a young War Doctor. Now, obviously, when we meet the War Doctor, he's already old and grizzled. He's been fighting this war for about 400 years, and this is a younger version of that particular Doctor, one that still believes that there could be a good end to this war, and that victory is at hand very early on in the War Doctor, in the Time War. So this is all I can say about the War Doctor for now. Now, something that I should probably bring up, if for no other reason than because I couldn't really find a good other place to put it, is the Fugitive Doctor. Now, obviously, we kind of talked about the Fugitive Doctor in her debut episode last week, Fugitive of the Jadoon. She also came back for a brief spell at the very end of The Timeless Children, and she also reappears in the Once Upon a Time. Not particularly one of my personal favorite episodes from Doctor Who Flux, but I do like it, and I gave it an honorable mention status last week because we get to see more of the Fugitive Doctor. Just at that point, through some wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff, she was being portrayed by Jody Whitaker with an awesome, badass black coat that she was wearing for the majority of that story. But this was essentially a very early Fugitive Doctor story before she ran away and assumed a human identity for who knows how many years. But I just love the concept and the idea that we now have this brand new Doctor that we can see many new stories from. And the reason I decided to bring her up in this episode, aside from just the fact that, well, she's a doctor that hasn't really appeared in her own series just yet, her own season, I should say, but she is getting her own comic book very, very soon, either at the end of this year or at the very beginning of next year. And from the article that I found this in, it seems to show that this comic book featuring the Fugitive Doctor not only is going to show us a brand new original story featuring this particular Doctor, but also it's going to tease great things to come. Whether that will be comic books or novels, or dare I even suggest it, a big finish series featuring this specific Doctor. Only time will tell, but I'm very, very excited to read that comic book whenever it comes out. And I can't wait to see more of this specific Doctor. It's a Doctor that predates what we thought that was the first Doctor, the William Hartnell Doctor. And from all accounts, she seems like a truly great Doctor, and I can't wait to learn more about her. Now, these are the last few of the canon Doctors, or rather, this is the last canon Doctor, I should say. Now, let's have a little bit of fun. I kind of like that we ended the canon, the canon Doctors after half an hour. So now we have about a half an hour to just talk about some random fun stuff for other Doctors, and starting with one of my personal favorites. Actually, I believe it's my personal favorite non-canon Doctor. It's Rowan Atkinson as a version of the Ninth Doctor. Yes, Rowan Atkinson, the guy that played Mr. Bean for many years. He also voiced Zazu in The Lion King. He's Blackadder. He's one of the great British icons, and he's playing another great British icon in the form of the Doctor. Now, his episode, and this is big, okay? I hope you're listening. He only appeared in one spoof story called The Curse of Fatal Death, written and produced by none other than Stephen Moffat. Yes, that's Stephen Moffat, the guy that became the showrunner for Doctor Who several years later. And it's kind of weird how these things happen every once in a while. They just, he produced one of the best spoof movies. Sorry, one of the best spoofs for Doctor Who a couple of years ago, and he actually then became the showrunner for the very same show. It's kind of a wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff, and obviously Rowan Atkinson played. The spoof itself is only 19 minutes, which is already way shorter than what this episode has become already. But it features Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor, Jonathan Pryce as the Master, and it also features several other Doctors that I decided not to include here, but I will be including them in in my Doctor Who T ranking list next week. But it also so spoiler alert: the Doctor kinda is forced to regenerate in this story. He regenerates into none other than Richard E. Grant. Then he regenerates again into Jim Broadbent, which some of you may know for the Harry Potter movies. He played Horace Slughorn. That's at least how I know him. He then also regenerates again into Hugh Grant and Joanna Lumley at the very end of the story, which is kind of weird because, yeah, he's playing the Ninth Doctor in this spoof, Rowan Atkinson, that is. He then regenerates into the 10th, 11th, and 12th Doctors, and then the 13th Doctor that we see in this spoof actually happens to be a blonde woman, which is, again, a little bit weird and wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey how these things happen with Doctor Who sometimes. More so, I would say, than most other franchises. But yeah, The Curse of Fatal Death, one of my personal favorite spoofs of all time, and highly recommend you watch. Next, another Doctor that some of you may be able to recognize, we have Peter Cushing. Yes, that Peter Cushing, just adding to a huge list of iconic people who have actually played this character, canon or otherwise. Yeah, Peter Cushing, years before he played Tarkin in Star Wars: A New Hope, he played Doctor Who, not the Doctor, Doctor Who, as in Dr. Who, in two directed video. I believe it's directed TV or directed to direct. No, actually, there was no video at that time. It was the 60s. So yeah, so two TV movies featuring this Doctor. Now, a little bit of behind the scenes canon and behind the scenes um, non-canon. So the first Dalek story, the Daleks, which is an episode we talked about in the first of these series of episodes that feature that specifically focus on the Doctors. It was so successful and so good that they actually produced. They actually made a colored version of it in the form of a TV movie called um, Doctor Who and the Daleks, which is it's a TV production. It kind of sometimes it feels more like a stage production that just happens to be um, um, presented as a movie, but it's basically it's the exact most for the most part the exact same story of the original episode, the Daleks. Just it happens to feature Peter Cushing as the Doctor, or rather Doctor Who. They don't refer to him as the Doctor. They simply refer to him as Doctor Who, and he even refers to the TARDIS as simply as TARDIS, not the TARDIS, which is a bit of weird way to go about things. But yeah, I mean, it's basically it's the Doctor, Ian, and Barbara from the Dalek story. Just this time it just happens to look like this in full color, and they really went all out with the colors because the Daleks have multiple colors in this in the story, and it's I wouldn't say it's shot for shot, beat for beat, the exact same story of the Daleks, but it's a fun watch. And a little bit of a side note: these exact same models of Daleks have actually appeared in the movie Looney Tunes Back in Action in Area 52, and they're the ones that actually exterminate Marvin the Martian at one point, and they attack Bugs Bunny and the gang. So yeah, these specific Daleks have actually appeared in a live action movie since the 60s, which is kind of weird and interesting. This is not the only time that they've had this. This is not the last time that Doctor Who has done this, because they did a follow up movie called The Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150 AD. This is obviously a direct to TV movie adaptation of The Daleks Invasion of Earth, or The Dalek Invasion of Earth. I can't remember if that's the name of the episode, but it's the second episode featuring the Daleks in William Hartnell's second season, and it was also adapted into a full-on movie. Now, there's a little bit of a continuity shift there. The Doctor does know, rather, Doctor Who knows of the Daleks, I believe, but and also Susan comes back, but now he doesn't have. There's no Barbara, no Ian. There's the Doctor Who now has a niece called Louise, which is, I guess, sort of filling the role of Barbara in the story. And there's also a random police officer, I can't remember his name, that just stumbles into the TARDIS thinking it's an actual police box, only to be whisked away by Doctor Who, Susan, and Louise into the Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150 AD. However, that police officer is played by the legendary Bernard Cribbins, who some of you may recognize as Wilfred Mott from the David Tennant era of Doctor Who, which is just it's great that he got to play this iconic character so many years later after playing this one-off character in this specific movie. And you can also see right there, Bernard Cribbins' name is on the poster right next to Peter Cushing's name. Now, another thing I wanted to bring up is this. Uh, Larry Henry, uh, from the Larry Henry Show. It's a comedy show back in the 80s, and he actually had an episode of his show where he basically played the Sixth Doctor in a sort of a spoof version. And I don't remember if I can't for the life of me remember if this specific spoof actually has a name to it. Uh, I can't remember if it's just Doctor Who spoof or just a Doctor Who story, but I don't know, just look up Doctor Who, The Larry Henry Show, and you should be able to find it. Basically, the episode itself opens like an average Doctor Who episode at the time, which at the time featured Colin Baker as the Sixth Doctor. We see the iconic opening of the Doctor Who theme with the face of Colin Baker that just sort of morphs into Larry Henry's face, followed by a laugh track from the people in the audience. But yeah, this is Larry Henry as the Sixth Doctor. Right next to him is a version of Perry, which is the Sixth Doctor companion at the time. But obviously, it's not played by Nicola Brandt. It's a I can't remember the name of the actress right now, but she's basically playing a heavily stereotyped version of this of a Doctor Who companion, but also a very heavily stereotyped version of this companion in particular. So yeah, Doctor Who spoofs. It's a rabbit hole that I think is worth checking out for the good laughs. And there's a pretty interesting or a pretty funny joke on, without spoiling it too much, a certain political leader at the time. That's really all I can say about this spoof without spoiling it, like I did with the War Doctor. But yeah, I highly recommend checking this out. It's really good. Now, the funny thing is, years later, Larry Henry actually did get to appear on Doctor Who, the main show, as a canon character, Daniel Burton, in the episode Spyfall, alongside Jody Whitaker as the 12th Doctor, and also alongside Sacha Dhawan as the Master. So again, it's weird how these things happen with Bernard Cribbins and Larry Henry and many other people. Speaking of which, one of those people is Richard E. Grant, which we talked about a minute ago. He actually regenerated from Rowan Atkinson's Ninth Doctor into the 10th Doctor, but in this version, he's actually playing the Ninth Doctor. Now, wait, I forgot something. Sorry to backtrack, but going back to Peter Cushing for a second there. So I mentioned earlier that this is considered non-canon. Little bit of a side note, in the novelization of Day of the Doctor, it's heavily mentioned that both the 10th Doctor, that this specific version of the Doctor is actually an in-universe movie taking place within the universe of Doctor Who. So basically, it's like someone kind of saw the Doctor come and go from Earth and wrote a movie version of what the Doctor would be, and it's actually being played by Peter Cushing in the Doctor Who universe. And I believe the 11th Doctor, the 10th and 11th Doctor mentioned that they're huge fans of the Peter Cushing movies in the universe, that is. And the 11th Doctor mentions actually traveling to the set of Doctor Who and the Daleks, and he's the one that gave Peter Cushing this coat that you see right here. So, I mean, it's kind of canon at this point. The jacket that you see Peter Cushing wearing was given to him by the 11th Doctor. So this is basically, it's the 11th Doctor's jacket given to the Peter Cushing Doctor. So it's pretty funny how these things turn out. The reason why I came back to this is because going back into the Richard E. Grant version of the Doctor. So this is the 9th Doctor in the 40th anniversary special of Doctor Who. We will get to the name of it in just a minute, but so this is a 9th Doctor completely devoid of the 9th Doctor we know of. Obviously, it's not the same 9th Doctor that Rowan Atkinson played, but it's also not the same 9th Doctor played by Christopher Eccleston, if for no other reason than for the fact that the Time War simply did not happen in this specific continuity. This is still the Ninth Doctor, who generated from the Eighth Doctor, Paul McGann, traveling around the universe, and he's still being sent on missions by the Time Lords. So in this specific continuity, the Time War never happened, and the Time Lords never perished, and there's still 9 incarnations in, or potentially even more if you include this Doctor in particular, but 9 incarnations in, they're still sending the Doctor on various missions to avoid breaking the rule of non-interference. Sort of a weird thing with the Time Lords is that they refuse to interfere in the affairs of other beings, or what they consider to be lesser beings, sort of like the Prime Directive in Star Trek, but they're perfectly fine with sending the Doctor to do these dirty works for them, which is, I feel is very interesting. Now, obviously, later it's been revealed that this Doctor, in particular, the Fugitive Doctor, was part of what's called the Division, which is sort of a subsection of Time Lords founded by Tic-Taoun to do these certain things, which I guess eventually a branch of it morphed into the CIA, the Celestial Intervention Agency, which is the main agency that sent, or rather used to send, the Second Doctor on these types of missions during the infamous season 6B, which is a whole other rabbit hole that we're not going to get into right now. But yeah, so this Doctor is still being sent to do certain missions for the Time Lords. In the episode, The Scream of the Shalka. Sorry, I've been talking for too long. I'm almost done. I'm sorry, I promise. But yeah, so The Scream of the Shalka is entirely animated. I believe I've only watched it once. I don't necessarily remember exactly what happens there, but it's a Doctor Who story, and it was specifically designed and made for the 40th anniversary of the show in 2003, 2 years before the show was brought back with the revival and the Christopher Eccleston Doctor. But I would say it's worth a watch if you're a Doctor Who fan and if you're interested to seeing other versions of the Doctor, like the ones we talked about today, like Larry Henry and like Rowan Atkinson and like Peter Cushing before him. This Richard E. Grant version of the Doctor is another version of the Doctor that is obviously, it's non-canon, but it is sort of the Doctor. And actually, side note, his specific TARDIS is the background that I chose for this show for this episode specifically, because eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that I try to change up the background of this show every episode. I also try to change the way this name tag with the creator on it changes. I try to change it every once in a while, and I always have a different background for each show. And this is what this Doctor's TARDIS looked like in the episode. I'm going to remove myself from the screen for a second to give you guys a better look. Okay, that was more than a second, but you get the idea. So this is what his TARDIS looked like, and I kind of like the sloping staircase, which we never see in any other version of the TARDIS, which is interesting. Stay tuned for a tier ranking list of all the different TARDIS interiors to come at the end of this month. I'm very excited for that one. I'm trying to get some guests on for that one. Hopefully, we get all of them. But yeah, going back to Scream with the Shalka for a second there, you see right there next to the Doctor, this is very clearly the Master, but following the events of the movie, spoiler alert, the Master kind of doesn't make it out alive. Now, obviously, the Master survives because he's the Master and he always survives, but for what people believed at that time, the Master was gone. People honestly believed the Master was dead, and so in this specific story, the Doctor kind of recreated the Master in the form of an android that is basically the Master, just he cannot leave the TARDIS ever. Which I guess is kind of where Russell T Davies got the idea for that was proposed at the end of Last of the Time Lords, that the 10th Doctor would just keep the Master with him in the TARDIS, and they would just not be able to go anywhere. And maybe it's kind of the inspiration for Peter Capaldi's final season with Missy just being trapped in the TARDIS doing maintenance work for him, not being able to leave. Maybe that's where they got the idea. But yeah, it's an android version of the Master that while he still is the Master, he still despises the Doctor to some degree. He's programmed to never hurt the Doctor, and he always just follow orders. He just doesn't have to like it because he's the Master. So yeah, it's an interesting watch to say the least. Now, one thing I want to touch on before we move on to the final thing I wanted to talk about in this episode is the Morbius Doctors. Now, obviously, I talked about it many times before, so I'll just do a quick refresher. During the episode The Brain of Morbius, the Doctor and a fallen Time Lord named Morbius engage in a sort of, I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's sort of like the Doctor calls it Time Lord wrestling, where they basically use their own memories and history to fight each other. And basically, Morbius kind of uses his previous incarnations. Obviously, the Fourth Doctor uses his previous incarnations to help him, starting with John Pertwee and Patrick Troughton, then William Hartnell. But then, all of a sudden, it brings up these... Actually, there's 7 people here. There should be 8. It just brings up 8... wrong picture, I'm afraid, but it just brings up these 8 Doctors that we've never seen before. Hold on, I think I found a better picture of it. I'm gonna bring it up right now. Sorry for I guess I should have taken care of that ahead of time. But yeah, these 8 Doctors just randomly appear on screen, and he's using them as weapons to fight in this battle, which is the first indication that the Doctor has had other lives that predate the William Hartnell incarnation that we all know of. Now, obviously, this was later expanded upon in The Timeless Children, and obviously with this incarnation of the Doctor, the Fugitive Doctor. But there we go. That's the proper picture. This is actually taken from the episode. So these 8 Doctors, I believe, were played by the members of the cast. Sorry, members of the production, I should say. All 8 of these are either directors or head writers or just, producers of the show at the time. Hold on, I think I have a list here. Nope. So basically, they were all played by members of the crew, directors, writers, showrunners at that time. So, which is pretty interesting. It's a way of keeping all 8 of these crew members, immortalize them in a sense as part of the show forever, and it's a great way to suggest that there's more to the Doctor than what we know, which is, again, I don't understand why people have this have had this bad reaction to the Timeless Children, where and saying that it makes no sense. If you really think about it, it actually does make a lot of sense, but that's really a story for another time. So yeah, right now, the reason I decided to bring up these 8 Doctors in particular is for the fact that we now have 8 Doctors unaccounted for, and it would be interesting to see these 8 Doctors in other stories, maybe running from the division, maybe working for the division, or maybe just being the Doctor all throughout time and space with these 8 faces that we've never got to see before. Now, obviously, I doubt we will get to see any of these in Big Finish. I don't even know if some of them are alive at this point, but one thing's for sure: they are not actors. They are writers. They are directors. Not every writer, director, or producer is suited to be an actor. So it will have to be either someone taking on their persona and just playing the Doctor on Big Finish or on television, or maybe just novels or comics. The possibilities are endless. There's no limitations to what Doctor Who can do, and I would be very much interested to learn more about these 8 Doctors. I might be the only person on the planet at this point, but I mean, it's me. I did mention a couple of weeks ago that my favorite part about this show and this franchise is the Doctor. He's the reason why, or rather, the Doctor is the reason why I love this show so much. So when you introduce a doctor like this one, or a doctor like this, or a doctor like this, of course I'm going to like it because it's the Doctor. I may not, it may not sit well with me for a time, but it's the Doctor. The Doctor is my favorite part of the show. It's the reason why I continue to rewatch the show. It's not for certain companions every once in a while. It's not even for the Daleks. It's not even for the planets and stuff. It's the Doctor. I want to see what the Doctor is up to. So that's why I would be very much interested to see more of the Doctor. It's more of the Doctor that we can enjoy, which is again, it's why I never understood why people didn't get on board with these Doctors straight off the bat. But I digress. Final thing I want to talk about before we wrap up this show today is Doctor Who Unbound. Doctor Who Unbound is a series of Big Finish stories, which I actually only just got into. I only just got around to just now. I started the first episode of Doctor Who Unbound. Still haven't finished it yet, but basically what it is, it's basically like a what if series of Doctor Who. What if certain things in the Doctor Who universe have happened differently? Like, for example, what if the Doctor and Susan had never left Gallifrey? What if the Doctor had not been UNIT's scientific advisor? What if the Doctor believed that the ends justify the means? What if the Valeyard won at the end of Trial of the Time Lord? So yeah, basically it's what it is. It's a what if series featuring different versions of the Doctor. So far 8 to be specific, but it's the Doctor in these types of scenarios that never actually happened on the show, but it's an interesting take on what could have been. It's sort of like Star Wars Visions or DC Elseworlds or the aforementioned Marvel's What If. It's basically a what if type series featuring the Doctor, and these episodes have been going on in and out of circulation since 2003. The first 6 were released all over 2003, which is around the time of the 40th anniversary. There was another episode in 2005, and the final episode was in 2008. But they are bringing it back now. There's more there's more Doctor Who Unbound being produced right now. So far, 2 episodes have been confirmed, and it's both of them at the moment are called Doctor of War, which it's basically like what if the 4th Doctor had made the ultimate decision on Skaro and destroyed the Daleks once and for all, going back to the Genesis of the Daleks episode, which we talked about last couple of weeks ago, of just the Doctor just killing the Daleks. What would have happened? What would the universe have looked like if the Doctor would have made that decision? Just the concept alone, the idea of it, sounds very intriguing to me, and I cannot wait to check it out whenever it comes out. Obviously, I gotta finish the Unbound series first, but and obviously I gotta listen to the actual War Doctor stuff that I said I was going to get around to, and the 8th Doctor. So many of the great stuff we talked about in today's episode, like Dark Eyes, and the continuation of this, and all of this. So yes, I think at this point, I didn't think I was going to have that much material to talk about in this episode today, and I'm assuming maybe probably you didn't either. So I'm glad I was finally able to actually to fill out a full hour just talking about the Doctor that hasn't actually appeared on the TV. Well, that isn't doesn't necessarily pertain to just um, the Doctors that we see on screen, and the Doctors that have had full seasons. So yeah, like I mean, I'm always shocked and surprised by how much there is to talk about Doctor Who, and even for someone like me, I'm always just shocked and surprised how there's still more to learn, more to know about Doctor Who, more to talk about Doctor Who. That it's what keeps me coming back to this show and this franchise. It's the reason why I'm such a big fan of the show, is because there's always more, and enough is never enough. But yeah, I managed to talk about a full hour just about other versions of the Doctor that you may not know. Now, obviously, there are so many other versions of the Doctor that I couldn't even get to in this episode, but some of them might appear next week when I talk about when I do a full T ranking list of all of my personal favorite Doctors. Now, obviously, not every single Doctor you see in this picture right here is going to make an appearance. Some of these I don't even know, especially that one right next to the first Doctor, and in between the first Doctor and Rowan Atkinson. Like, who is she? Like, I have never seen this Doctor in any version. The one right underneath the Peter Cushing Doctor. I've never seen this woman as the Doctor, and that's what's so fascinating about me, is that I still find uh, stuff that I don't know. As much as I know about Doctor Who, there's still stuff I don't know about it, and that's what's really intriguing to me, and that's why I love the show as much as I do. I think I said that enough times already for you to get the gist. But yeah, join me next week when I do a full T ranking list by myself on all on as many Doctors as they can fit on screen, and join me again 2 weeks from now when me and some guests will be doing a T ranking list of all the various different TARDIS interiors. That should be a lot of fun, especially considering some of the guests that I have planned for that episode. But that is a story for another time. Today, I hope that is all I can say for now about the Doctor right now. If you really enjoyed hearing me talking about Doctor Who, I also have my own YouTube channel. It's called 50 Shades of Geek. I just recently did a major rebranding of it on my channel. We don't just talk about Doctor Who on this channel. We also have a Star Wars show called Let's Talk About Star Wars. We're doing a championship of the Alien game, if for those of you who don't know what that is, in a couple of weeks from now. We just did another all-night taco stand or all-night kiwi stand. I don't know. I'm very confused on who owns the rights to the taco stand at this point. We used to have a show called Northern Unwind, but that is taking a hiatus at the moment. There's another show planned and lined up. Hopefully, I'm not spoiling it, but there is something planned to replace that for the time being. We also have Get Sweaty, or rather, we changed it, we branded it to Northern Countdown with myself, Ben Rayner, and Soda. We also have You Seen This, where we talk about other TV shows that are not Doctor Who. So, lesser TV shows than Doctor Who. What else? We have we have Mount Schmodown. We have The Square Slice, a show about wrestling, which just came back. It's with Soda and Dustin. We have so many shows that it's getting pretty hard to keep track. We also have Schmodown Analytics with Kiwi and Double D, and yeah, just a lot of other fun and cool stuff on this channel. And it will mean it would mean the world to us if you would consider subscribing and joining us on this journey. I have been me. You have been you. And I think I think it's just about time to wrap up this episode. And well, I'll see you again next week. Until then, everybody, Allons-y!